In addition, the young men with the most time on their hands, the ones from the upper classes, like to come along with me and listen to people being questioned. These fellows often imitate me and try questioning others. I suspect they find a large supply of folks who think they know something, but when they actually know little or nothing. And then the people who have been grilled by those youngsters get angry, not at themselves, but at me. This Socrates, they say, is the most abominable man, and he corrupts the youth. When someone asks how I do that, with what sort of actions or teaching, they don't have an answer. They don't know, but rather than appear to be stumped, they repeat the handy old cliches about philosophers. Things up in the air, and things beneath the earth, and not believing in gods, and making the worst case look better. I imagine they'd rather not tell the truth, that they've been caught pretending to know something when they know nothing. And because there are a lot of them, and they're extremely concerned about their prestige, they line up and speak plausibly about me. They've long since filled your ears with violent slander. Meletus and Anytus and Lycon have angrily attacked me. Meletus on behalf of the poets, Anytus on behalf of the craftsmen and the politicians, and Lycon on behalf of the orators. What I've told you, Athenians, is the truth. I've concealed nothing, I've evaded nothing, big or little, and yet I'm pretty sure that what I've done has made them hate me. That hatred shows when I'm speaking the truth. It's the reason they've slandered me, as you'll find out whenever you investigate this now or later. Now then, Athenians, I'm going to present my defense not for my own sake, as one might suppose, but for your sake. I mean so that you don't condemn me, and thereby sin against the gift the God gave you. For if you kill me, you'll find it hard to find someone like me. Someone who, if I can use a crude and ridiculous expression, goes after the city the way a gadfly goes after a big thoroughbred horse that's sluggish because of his great size, and that needs to be roused by stinging. It seems to me that the God has inflicted me upon the city in some fashion. I never stop rousing and persuading and chiding every one of you, landing on you everywhere all day long. You're not likely to get another gadfly like me, so take my advice and spare me. You might get vexed the way sleepy people do when they're waked up. You might swat me if you listen to Anytus and easily kill me. Then you'd spend the rest of your lives sleeping, unless the God in his kindness were to send you someone else like me. I happen to be a gift of the God on the city, and this is how you can tell. Unlike most people, I've neglected all my own interests. I've put up with this private neglect for so many years now, while always attending to your business. I've taken each one of you aside, like a father or elder brother, and encouraged you to have care for virtue. Now, if I had gotten any profit out of this, or been paid for my advice, that would have made sense. But now you yourselves can see that my accusers, who shamelessly throw every other charge at me, haven't taken their shamelessness so far as to get somebody to testify that I ever charged anyone a fee or asked for pay. And I think I myself have a witness to the fact that I'm speaking my father. So the jury returns a guilty verdict. Meletus asks for the death penalty. There are many reasons, Athenians, why I'm not disturbed by your vote condemning me. It's what I expected. But I was much more surprised by the number of votes for and against. I didn't think I'd lose by a narrow margin, but by a much wider one. Look, if only 30 votes had gone the other way, I would have been acquitted. You may think that by arguing this way, as in my remarks about wailing and pleading, I'm just putting up a bold front. That's not true. No, I'm convinced that I never deliberately harmed anyone. But I can't convince you about this, because we've only had a short time for our discussion. I think that you would be convinced if you had a law, as other places have, requiring death penalty cases be judged not in a single day, but over several days. But as things stand, it's hard to quash these slanders in a short time. Anyhow, convinced as I am that I never harmed anyone, I'm not about to harm myself by saying I deserve anything bad, or propose a penalty like that for myself. What do I have to fear? Am I worried about the penalty Meletus proposes when I've said that I don't know whether death is a good thing or a bad thing? Should I choose instead something that I'm sure is bad? Should I propose to be sent to prison? But why should I offer to live in a prison, slaving away for whichever magistrates have been elected? Should I propose a fine and be kept in chains till I pay it? But then my old problem comes up. I don't have any money to pay a fine. Should I propose being sent off into exile? That punishment might suit you. But I would have to be madly in love with life if I failed to realize that if you, my fellow citizens, can't endure my arguments and discussions, so bothersome and irritating do you find them that you want to get rid of them for good, then other people wouldn't endure them either. Not a chance. And what a wonderful life I'd lead if I went off, a man of my age, moving from one city to another, only to be driven out. Because I'm well aware that wherever I go, the young people will listen to what I say as they do here. And if I antagonize them, they'll drive me out by persuading their elders to do so. Or if I don't antagonize them, their fathers and family members.
Some might say, Socrates, why can't you just go away from here and keep quiet and not say anything? This is the hardest thing to get some of you to understand. Because if I tell you that doing that would mean disobeying the God, and so I can't keep quiet, you'll think I'm putting you on, and you won't believe me. And if I say the best thing for everyone is to spend some time every day talking about virtue, and the other things you hear me discussing and examining myself about, and if I say that the unexamined life is not worth living, you'll believe me even less. That's how it is. That's why it's hard to persuade you. Athenians, you won't save a lot of time by condemning me now. And the people who want to pour abuse on the city will give you a bad name for killing Socrates, the wise man. That's because the ones who want to blame you will say that I'm wise, even though I'm not. If you had waited a little while, you would have gotten your wish without lifting a finger. You see how old I am, how far in life, and how close to death. I'm not saying this to all of you, but to those that voted for my death. And I have another thing to tell them. Perhaps you think I've been convicted for lack of arguments that would have persuaded you. If only I had thought it right to say and do everything possible to win an acquittal. Far from it. I was convicted not by a lack of arguments, but by my lack of ruthlessness and shamelessness and willing to tell you what you most wanted to hear. You would have found it sweet to hear me groaning and grieving and doing all sorts of things that are beneath me. You know, the kind of things you're used to hearing from others. But I didn't think then that because I was in danger, I ought to do anything unworthy of a free person. Nor do I now regret defending myself the way I did. I would much rather die for that sort of defense than to live after giving some other sort. For neither in the courtroom nor on the battlefield should I or anyone else scheme to escape death any which way. It's often clear in battle that you can avoid death by throwing down your weapons and pleading for mercy from those around you. And there are many other schemes for dodging death amid all sorts of danger, if you have it in you to do or say anything at all. It's not hard to escape death, but it's much harder to escape wickedness, because it runs faster than death. Old and slow as I am, I've been caught by the slower runner, death, while my accusers, who are clever and swift, have been caught by the faster runner, wickedness. Now I'm going away, found guilty by you and condemned to death, while they go away. But it's the truth that has found them guilty of evil and injustice. I'll stand by my sentence, and they'll stand by theirs. Perhaps this is how it has to be. I think it's all right. And now, for those of you who voted to condemn me, I'd like to make a prophecy. I am, in fact, at the place where most people do prophesy, the point when they're about to die. You've killed me, but I have to tell you that you'll be punished immediately after my death. And the punishment will be a lot harsher than the one you gave by putting me to death. You did that thinking you'd get off the hook, that you wouldn't have to render an account of the lives you've led. But I'd say that things will work out very differently for you. There will be more people demanding an account of you. You didn't notice it, but I held them back. And they'll all be the harder on you insofar as they'll be younger, which will only make you angrier. Because if you think that by killing people you can avoid being taken to task for not living as you should, then you're wrong. That kind of escape is neither available nor honorable. The easiest and finest escape is not by doing people in, but by making yourself the best person possible. That's my prophecy to those of you who have condemned me. And now, I bid you farewell. But for those of you who voted to acquit me, I'd like to say a few more words about this event, while the magistrates are still busy and before I head for where I must die. Stay a bit longer with me. Nothing prevents us from conversing while we can. You're my friends, and I want to show you the meaning of what's just happened to me. Let's think this over another way. Consider how there's every reason to hope that death is a good thing. To have died means one of two things: either to be in a state of nothingness, or to have no awareness of anything. Or else, as they say, it's a kind of change and migration of the soul, from where it is to somewhere else. If there's no consciousness, as in a sleep where you sleep the whole night through without dreaming, then death would be a marvelous gain. I think that if someone had to pick a night when he or she slept soundest without even dreaming, and then compared it with all the other days and nights of his life, that person would have to say, "How many days and nights in my life have I lived through more sweetly and pleasantly than this one?" I think that not only an ordinary individual, but the king of Persia himself could find precious few days or nights like that one. If that's the nature of death, I'd call it a gain, for then all time turns out to be nothing more than a single night. But if, on the other hand, death is a departure to another place, and what they say about it is true, and all the dead are there, then what greater good could there be than this? For if a person arrives in the underworld having gotten away from these so-called judges, and he or she finds there the real judges who are said to preside there, Minos and Rhadamanthus and Aeacus and Triptolemus, and the demigods who lived righteous lives, that would be a splendid journey. And what would you give to get together with Orpheus and Musaeus and Hesiod and Homer? I'd be willing to die many times if this is true. And I'd find it marvelous to live there and meet Palamedes or Ajax, son of Telamon, or any of the other ancients who died because of an unjust judgment. I could compare my troubles with theirs. I think that would be quite pleasurable. Best of all would be to spend my time examining and questioning the people there as I do here to discover who's wise and who thinks he is but isn't. What price would you pay, judges, to question Agamemnon, who led the great army against Troy, or Odysseus, or Sisyphus, and countless others, men and women? Talking to them and being with them, examining with them. What indescribable happiness! I don't suppose they kill people there for doing that, since everyone is immortal forever afterwards, as well as being happier in other ways than people here, if what they say is true. But now you, my judges, must take a hopeful view of death, and reflect on this one truth. Nothing evil can befall a good person, either in life or in death. The God will not neglect his or her fate. Thus my case didn't play out by chance. It's clear to me that it's better for me to die now and be free from all my troubles. That's why the special sign that I get from heaven never warned me off this matter. Now I don't hold it against my accusers and the ones who voted to condemn me. Yet in accusing and condemning me, They did mean to injure me.